In the past presentations and the current ones that are posted, you'll see that we've covered quite a lot about working with families. We customized the conceptual mass families by creating different mass designs and applying walls, floors, and curtain wall systems to them using some of these tools. We also created changes to existing families by opening up a bike rack or a table and redesigning what's already there, saving it as a different name so that we could have a new family. We looked at creating a brand new title block family or using an existing one to add our logo. We also created a profile for the sweeps and the reveals and the curtain wall mullions themselves. A lot of customization takes place inside the family files. We also looked at the difference between a conceptual mass family template and a family template that's based on a category. We said that in this mass template, we're going to create a form and then use create form, solid form, to create sweeps and extrusions, revolve, and blend. The difference is that when you create here a family file that's based on something like furniture, you are using extrusion, blends, and revolve right here in the ribbon. The mass file can be used when loaded into the project to create building forms and apply walls and faces to it. And the family file, when loaded into the project, becomes a three-dimensional object that can be used like a component. And depending on which family template you started with, you'll have different settings that are established already in the template. There's also a difference between creating an external file that you can keep in your library and load into several projects, or right inside the Revit project, creating here a model in place component and then establishing a category. If you change the filter list to architecture, you'll have several categories to choose from: walls, furniture, roofs, which will help you to work with the objects in a little different way. So for instance, the walls, you'll be able to add windows and doors. There's also a mass here, which is very similar to going to the Massing and Site tab and picking in place mass. The difference between working with an individual file and working with a mass right in the drawing is that you have less parameters and planes, reference lines, although you can place some of those reference planes and lines. They're not in the file to work with and a little bit harder to manage. Whereas if you create a mass family using this mass family template, you have kind of an environment that's already established with reference plane, making it easier for you to create parameters to customize your mass. We also looked at, in the past videos, customizing annotation and used customizing a section head as a part of creating your own style for annotation. And we inserted this chair into a family that just had the table, so we created a nested family, one inside the other. We also did that with the curtain panel pattern that we created and brought into our mass family for the divided surfaces. In this table and chairs example for that presentation, we linked parameters and used formulas. There are so many formulas online for various mathematical equations, and if you're a programmer and like to work with these numbers, then it's very customizable. We actually use circumference in one of the assignments. You can use square root for things like sine and cosine. There are ways to say if something is less than a number, then force a check in or unchecked in a spot for a parameter. There are other conditional statements like if something happens, then it can either be true or false. And then we have all of these other operators like less than, greater than, equal, divide. When you look at all of these, you know that there are so many that you can dive into and start to work with. Here are the trigonometry formulas that you can use right in the family itself under the parameters. We even have the range and looking at the chord length and the angle, rounding numbers, and so many more as you go through different blogs and search for those parameters. So I would recommend that you go back and look at the presentations that we've already established. We're going to create a family that uses all of these different conditions so that you can know where to put these formulas inside the families. So we're going to open up an existing family and add another family inside of it, creating a link and establishing formulas and showing you where you can start to customize inside a family. Then we'll start to look at schedules and how to use formulas within schedules and calculated values. So we're going to start by opening a family file under the Imperial folder under Furniture. We'll look for the folder called Tables, and inside the Tables folder there's one called Table Dining. Let's go to the ref level view, which is in the project browser under Floor Plans. And now you'll notice that there's already a parameter set up for length. So if I change this length from 7 feet to 6 feet, you'll see that the table ends change automatically. And you see how it's going from the center outwards? That's because that dimension is equal on both sides. So you place a dimension, you pick the lock, and it's equal, and it's set as being equal. The width parameter does the same kind of thing. We'll change that to 3 feet and see that it will also update there as a parameter that's set in place. Because we open an existing table, we should do a save as and save this family as a different name in a different folder. Let's call it your last name, table and chairs, and pick save. We're going to erase or delete the equal dimensions so that when we dimension, the table will lengthen from left to right. Let's go to Insert and pick Load Family, the Furniture folder again, and pick here Furniture and Seating. Then pick the second chair there, the chair border, and pick Open. Then we'll go to the Create tab and pick Component so that we can place this chair. Before you place it, use the space bar to rotate it and then click. And now we're going to select it so that we can use the mirror tool to click a point, pull your mouse from left to right, and click another point for the mirror axis so that you can create another one on the other side. Hold your control key down and select both of those so that we can turn on and off the visibility in the project. Right now in the family we have a check mark to turn on and off the visibility, but if you pick that small little icon to the far right, you'll be able to attach a parameter to that setting. So we can pick add parameter, and you can call it chairs if you like. I called mine chairs on off so that you would know. And the type of parameter is yes, no. So it's either on or off. And then the group parameter is going to be under the heading visibility. You pick OK and then pick OK again. And now we've set that parameter. Hold your control key down and select both of those chairs again, and then pick array. With the array command, you have a choice of picking second or last. We're going to use second so that when we click for a start point around the midpoint of the chair, we'll go over to the right and click for a second point. Now we're going to link a parameter to that array. So I'll move this length dimension up a little bit just by selecting it and dragging it up out of the way. And then if you select the chair and look for that little dimension that shows a number that establishes the number of chairs, when you see array, then click, and you'll see in the options bar that you can go under label and pick add a parameter. In this parameter properties, we are going to name this chairs, and it's going to be an integer because that's going to be how many chairs. And then the group parameter will be underneath construction, and we'll pick OK. And now we've established a parameter so that we can add more chairs and we can create a longer table. Let's save this file and then click on Family Types icon at the top left corner, and you'll see that in this Family Types dialog box, we're still in the family. We have dimensions for the height, length, and the width, and we have a number of chairs. But if you look underneath the name, there are 3 names in this drop down, which we're going to rename. We'll start with the one that we already have. It's a 3-foot table by a 6-foot table. So I'm going to pick rename for the family types and type in 3 foot times 6 feet. So 3 feet times 6 feet, and then pick OK. So we're now establishing a name underneath the family types for a 3 by 6 table. So now we're going to change in that drop down to a different one and change the parameters so that we can establish a length of 10 feet. So let's change the length to 10 or 10 feet and then change the chairs to 4. And when we pick apply, you'll see that you have a 10-foot length table with 4 chairs on one side. It's actually 8 chairs, but we're going to rename this one as a 3-foot by 10-foot table. So 3 feet times 10 feet, and then we'll go to the next one in the drop down and change the parameters for the length of the table as 14 feet and change the amount of chairs to 6. When we do that, you'll actually have 12 chairs. When you pick apply, you'll take a look to see that it looks right. You can now rename that family type as 3 feet by 14 feet and pick OK. So now what do we have? Inside this family, we have 3 different types. We have the different size chairs, and each one of them have different parameters. This is how a lot of families have 5 or 6 different types within that family when you load it into a drawing. So for instance, a window might have 5 different sizes. If we apply those parameters, you'll see that the family changes. We can then go ahead and pick OK, and start a project, a Revit project that we can load them into. So we'll go up to the application menu, start a brand new project. I use the architectural template, and then you can use Control Tab to go back to the family file, or you can go to the very top there and find that icon to switch over back to the family file. Go to the family file and pick Load Family. So now I'm in the project and I'm loading the family into the project. I can see in the drop down that there are my 3 different sizes. I'm able to select one and then click in the project file so that I can insert or load this family. And notice here when I change the different drop down configurations for this chair, it updates automatically. Selecting the chair, you'll notice that when we pick Edit Type, you'll see at the bottom of the type properties that visibility for turning the chairs on and off. Take the check mark out and pick Apply, and you'll see that the chairs will turn off. That was nested inside the family until we created a parameter linked to that visibility. So let's put the check mark back in so that we can keep our chairs in there. If you did want to add more inside the project, you would then pick Duplicate and create a different name there so that you can establish different numbers under those parameters. Let's go to the 3D view and change our visual display to realistic, looking at the material. Right now, the base is made up of the 2 pieces underneath the table, and then the table is a separate material. So if you select the family and pick Edit Family, you're back inside the family. You could have used Control Tab or switched over. So now in the 3D view, inside the family file, if I select the base bottom piece, you'll see that the material is grayed out. And it's grayed out because there's a parameter that's attached to that material. They've already added here a parameter so that you can change the material in the project and not have to change the material here in the family. And the same thing with these 2 supports here. Those are under the base, and the table is actually called top material. So you have the top material and the base material. What we're going to do is highlight the support 2 bars there and pick that small little icon next to materials, pick add parameter, and then give it a name, support material. And it's already here as material and material finishes. We can go ahead and pick OK so that that center piece is a different material. Pick OK. So now instead of establishing the material in the family, when we load this back into the project, go ahead and pick Load to Project. You're going to pick Override the existing version and its parameters. And what you'll see when you select the family and pick Edit Type, those 3 different finishes that you can change. So everyone will have a slightly different project because I'd like you to go ahead and change the material for those 3 pieces, at least the top of it and the support and base. And the distance between the chairs will all be different because we clicked to make that array. I've posted 3 families online so that you can open them up and take a look at the family types. When you look at the family types, you'll see that these families have several material finishes that are set up as parameters, and other parameters like electrical, voltage, and frequency. Some of these you can change, but notice if the formula is the same as the value is grayed out. There are dimensions that include formulas, like the width minus 4 inches. And there are conditions here, like this one, that is one of those if statements. And as a choice, when you add a parameter, one of the types you can use is a URL. So many of these will link directly to their websites. This one has a different set of parameters. You can take a look at some of the constraints. And again, formulas used like the square foot of 3 and the URL for their site. And this window family that also has formulas set up, establishing brackets and parentheses for the rough opening width plus 6 inches minus this other dimension divided by 2. So you'll see within these and others that you can open and explore all of the different parameters that we talked about. But as you can see with the type of parameter, there's also an angle. So if you draw a line and then attach an angular dimension to it, you can decide on the angle of that line. And if you need any help with these as you start to create your own, please don't hesitate to contact me and I can help you to program your family formulas. The last thing for this assignment, as we're looking at using formulas inside families, is to look at formulas within schedules. And so in this project file, we can save it as your name, assignment 5, or whatever assignment you're working with. And then in the level 1 view, we can create a floor underneath it so that we can create a concrete slab and then create a schedule that's a material takeoff schedule, establishing the area, the volume of the concrete, the cubic yards of the concrete, and the cost per cubic yard. So in the level 1 view, go ahead and pick floor and then use the generic 12-inch and pick edit type. When you pick edit type, you're going to duplicate it and create a new floor called concrete floor, 4 inches, and then pick the edit button under structure and change the thickness of your structure to 4 inches and pick the material here to select concrete cast in place. So now you've defined a brand new type and set the thickness to 4 inches. You can use a rectangle if you'd like to create this floor. Just click here and here in 2 different areas and then pick the green check mark. I've already created one, so I just went through those steps. Once you've created that concrete floor slab, you can go to the View tab and go to Schedules and pick Material Takeoff. Once you pick Material Takeoff, you can rename your schedule. So you can change the name here to Concrete Material Takeoff. This could actually be your project material takeoff if you decided to create other fields that might be a part of this. But this is specific to concrete for this example. Project the floor category. Inside the material takeoff properties, you're going to add fields, and that's what these columns are. So you can scroll down to family, highlight family and pick add, and then material name and pick add, and then I'm going to select area and pick add, and material volume and pick add. The next field is going to have a parameter and a calculated value. The calculated value is going to be the cubic feet divided by 27 to get cubic yards. So you can pick calculated value, and then here type in the name, concrete. Now originally I kept this as a number, but that needed to be a volume, so it didn't work, and that's why I have this one behind it. You won't have this one or the other one. You're still working within the material takeoff properties, but the concrete field should be the type volume. And now I can pick this small icon with the three dots there and pick up material volume, and then type in divide using the symbol for the divide or the slash mark, and then 27 to convert the number from cubic feet to cubic yard. I can go ahead and pick OK. And now the cost is the parameter because we're going to enter the cost. The cost of concrete changes and we'll need to enter that. So pick add parameter and type in cost. And this cost will be a number. We can change the type of parameter to number and pick OK. And then the last one is the calculated value, and it's called total cost per cubic yard. So I can just type in CY for cubic yard. So at first you would think that the total cost would be a number or currency, but if you use this small icon to bring in the formula concrete and then asterisk for multiply cost, so you're multiplying the concrete cubic yards times the cost, and if you pick OK, you'll see it says inconsistent units. So it has kind of the volume times the currency. So we have to change this to volume. I can go ahead and pick OK. So let's pick OK and see how our schedule is coming along. If we click here, we can type in 90, and that's kind of an estimate on how much the cost would be for concrete per cubic yard. And then I clicked here on the schedule to bring the column names back. The units are cubic feet instead of cubic yards. So even after your schedule is placed, you can pick here fields or formatting. So I'll go ahead and pick formatting. And under formatting or formatting tab, because if you notice here, these are tabs that you can work with. And if you're going through some of the past examples of what we've worked with, we did use a filter to filter out that recycled material if you wanted to find out a specific material that you used and how much of it you used. But here under formatting, I'm going to go to the total cost per square yard and go to the field and I can see it's cubic feet. So I want to change that to cubic yard. It should update my number. And there it is. And there's your schedule for the concrete floor cost per cubic yard. You can change some of the settings here if you wanted to go under formatting and picking edit. So for each one of these, I could go, for instance, to area and change the alignment to center and maybe even the cost. Possibly all of these could be center. Just wanted to show you here that I could change the fields so that their alignment is centered, and when I pick OK, those numbers will center within that column. So now you can see in this assignment, we started with the conversation about families and what we've done in the past. Please take the time to go through some of those presentations if you haven't seen those already. And then we created a family that had several parameters and formulas within those families, and then created a quick schedule to show you that we can add parameters and calculated values to our schedules.